Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way at the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsom with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Howe, pump fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Howe at the 5. Takes the shot. Pinballing off the chains for the touchdown. Showing the toughness for 6. Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right. Throws to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag. Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll it apart. Oh, now he's going to throw it and score! Throws it to Payson in the end zone for the touchdown. They are going to play for the left hand. Was walking out on the run and threw it left-handed. Nard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah. Welcome in, guys, to the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotta, with you guys, as always. And a new season means a new intro. Hope you guys like that. We got a new background. So, yeah, we are going all new this year for the start of the Bill Belichick era here in Chapel Hill. Josh Marlowe, that's the one thing that's still the same alongside me here on this edition of the podcast, as we welcome you into our living areas. I'm in the I'm in the kitchen here at the house. Meanwhile, Josh is over in the living room at his house. But tonight, it is time to get into TCU, break down the Horned Frog, the matchup with the TCU Horned Frogs as the Tar Heels get ready to take them on in just 4 days. While college football is underway, while NC State is currently smashing East Carolina. South Florida is currently pulling an upset against Boise State. Carolina's got to wait a little bit longer to get their opener underway. So we're going to go through tonight. We're going to talk to you about TCU. We're then going to take you through the Tar Heel storylines. We'll give you the keys to the game. And then, of course, we will predict the game for this matchup with the TCU Horned Frogs. And let's just jump right into it, because the Tar Heels looking for their fourth straight season opening win. They have won 4 straight. The last time, of course, that they lost was to Virginia Tech back in 2021. That was a road game for Carolina. This game is not. This, of course, is in the friendly confines of Kenan Stadium. It is the 4th all-time meeting with TCU. Carolina leads the series 3-0. First meeting since 1997, and that game went in favor of the Tar Heels 31-10 back during the Mac Brown era. They are hoping that they can sort of recapture that type of success. That one was on the road in Fort Worth, so hopefully Carolina can recapture that type of success at home in this one as they take on the TCU Horned Frogs. You know, I'll just get your initial thoughts on TCU before I really break them down. But, you know, this is a pretty tough opponent for Carolina out of the gate. I think it's one of the tougher ones that we see on Carolina's schedule, a schedule that we have said many times looks like one of the easier ones in the ACC, at least as we sit here to start the year. So this is going to be a real challenge coming out of the gate for the Tar Heels, even though the game is at home.
Yeah, I think that's why we've highlighted really all offseason what this game could represent in terms of momentum. And even though, yes, it's the first game of the year and that it's not a make or break season, if they were to lose the game, Carolina could still go on to have a quality first year under Bill Belichick. But if they can come out and beat a team that is more than capable of competing, winning a Big 12 championship, I think it would just go a long way for the confidence of this group. That's, you know, as we've talked all offseason, 70 new players. Like there is going to be some growing pains. They got to learn how to win. But if they could come out and beat a team like TCU, I think that would really just go a long ways in terms of momentum, because this is a squad that, I think the average fan maybe doesn't know how good TCU is, doesn't know how good of a coach Sonny Dykes is, probably thinks that when they made the national championship game a few years ago, and because they got routed, that was just a fluke year. But I mean, this is a program that for you and I, the majority of our lifetimes watching this sport, they've, a contender, winning 10 games on an annual basis back when they were in the Mountain West, and they made the move to the Big 12. And, back at the initial 14 playoff was on the doorstep of making the playoff back then. And then they got through a few years ago and they got to the title game. They got routed by Georgia, but this is a program that has a good tradition. They've produced many a great player, something that Bill Belichick told his team when they had the first meeting about TCU. He told them the backstory of the program, wants them to understand kind of what they're going up against, that this is a proud program that is used to winning. And, they come into Keene, they will be favored according to the odds makers in Vegas. And I think that might catch some people by surprise, but they return a quarterback that set the single season passing yard record for that program a year ago. Sonny Dykes has always been one of my favorite offensive coaches in the sport. And they've got a bunch of guys that have played a high level football for them. So, for all the excitement that's going to be around this game, all the hype and the anticipation, Carolina's got to be prepared because they've got a quality opponent that's coming to visit them on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at Sonny Dykes, he's probably one of the more underrated head coaches in the entire country.
Yeah.
What he did just a few years ago, taking them to the national championship game. And yeah, they came up short against Georgia, but I mean, they beat Michigan, and then Michigan turned around the next season and won the national championship. It shows you the type of prowess that they actually have. You're right. That program does have a history of being successful. Now, granted, some of it comes in the Mountain West Conference, but we're talking about teams like Utah that haven't been able to accomplish what TCU has accomplished by moving up to the next level. Even Boise State making it to the college football playoff last year, they weren't able to get to the stage that TCU was able to get to. So I think this is certainly a program that is going to come in ready to go. I think they are excited for their season as well. They come off a 9-4 season a year ago. And they look at themselves as one of the contenders in the Big 12. And I think they probably should with all that comes back for them this year. Of course, their offensive coordinator, Kendall Briles, back this year. One of the better innovators in terms of, just the offensive side of the football here in college football over the last few years. He's been a lot of destinations, but everywhere he goes, he has success. Josh Hoover, as you mentioned, is the starting quarterback for them. He threw for a school record 3,949 yards last season, posted a 27-11 touchdown to interception ratio, while helping the team finish 8th in passing offense in the country. He, certainly has to replace a couple of really productive wide receivers that he had a year ago. Jack Beck is the biggest one that he has to replace, but also John Paul Richardson. But he does bring back one of the top playmakers on the outside, not only in the conference, but in the country, in Eric McAllister, a guy who averaged 19.5 yards per reception last year when he caught 39 passes for 762 yards and 5 touchdowns. So he's certainly someone that Carolina has to be aware of going into this matchup. If they are going to come out with a victory. DeAndre Rogers also returns a tight end, certainly a guy to keep an eye on after last season. Didn't do a whole lot for them, but another year in that system, they're going to be counting on him to step up. At running back, it's Trent Battle and Jeremy Payne, who will hope to improve a running game that was one of the worst in the entire country last year. Ranked outside of the top 100, ran for just 113.9 yards per game. But this is a group that, I still think has some potential, and Carolina's got to be careful with that. The offensive line returns 3 of their 5 starters from a year ago. They are led by a steady veteran Carson Bruno at guard, but they're going to need more from Ben Taylor Whitfield, who is a guy that struggled a little bit last year. Some of his grades on Pro Football Focus, not great. Also allowed a decent amount of pressure a year ago. But the thing is, didn't allow a ton of sacks, just 15 sacks the entire season taken by Josh Hoover. So teams were able to get pressure on the quarterback at times, but weren't able to bring the quarterback to the ground. So that's something that Carolina is going to have to wrestle with in this game. When you look at this offense, I think really it's very obvious what they are going to want to do in this game. I know that it's a new year. Maybe there is more hope in that running game, but it feels like to me, Carolina's got to be prepared for a lot of passing in this game and a lot of Josh Hoover looking for his playmakers.
No, most definitely. You just look at who the head coach is, who the play caller is. They come from that air raid background, and now granted, you've seen some air raid coaches, maybe like a Dana Holgerson, who's now the offensive play caller at Nebraska. They maybe have evolved where they use air raid formations, but they use it to really be able to run the football. That's not what TCU looks. That's not what they want to do, and that's not what they're gonna do. They're gonna spread Carolina out. They're gonna use all 53 1/3 inches in terms of width of the field to kind of spread Carolina, and they're going to challenge them with the vertical passing game. They're going to want to push the football down the field. They're going to get the ball out of Hoover's hands quickly. Belichick mentioned it in his press conference where it's a lot of quick game stuff too. So Carolina's got to be very active up front defensively. They've got to win up front simply because I don't know with the way that TCU wants to get the ball out of their hands. You can blitz, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get home enough to really impact Hoover, impact the quarterback. And so, I think we're going to really learn a lot about this revamped defense. We're really high on the secondary with the arrival of Thaddeus Dixon, and kind of what this passing game is going to present a challenge for. We'll learn a lot about him. Did Marcus Allen, has he taken that next step? Has he found his footing finally as a senior defensive back for Carolina? Because this is going to be a team that's going to put the ball in the air. They're going to put the ball in the air early. They're going to put the ball in the air often. And they're really going to challenge Carolina all night long with their passing game. If they can run the football, I think it's going to be a bonus. But I think they could come into our building, and even if they find themselves having to throw it 40, 50 times, they're confident they can win that way. They won a lot of games like that a year ago. And so if they find themselves having to do it once again on Monday night, they will not be surprised.
Yeah, I think that's the expectation going in, is that they are going to throw the ball a lot, and Carolina's got to be prepared for that. You mentioned that, it's going to test these guys in the secondary. I mean, it's on the defensive line, man, to be able to get after the quarterback and really change what the defensive backs are going to be seeing. If they can get pressure on the quarterback, that's really going to change things. And, they do return 3 of the 5 starters from a year ago, but 2 of those guys are on the interior. You've got a tackle that struggled last season. So Carolina's got to be able to take advantage of that. And that's something that we'll talk about a little bit more here as we go throughout and start talking about some of the Tar Heel headlines. But I mean, yeah, man, that's just something that they got to be able to do is change the picture for Josh Hoover, not allow him to stand back there and pick them apart like we've seen teams in years past be able to do to them. You go to the defensive side of the ball, it's the second year under coordinator Andy Avulos. This is a defensive line group that is pretty talented. You've got Devion Neal, who's back after recording 10 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks a year ago. You've also got freshman All-American Zach Chapman, who's back after registering 3 tackles for loss, as well as 3 sacks. Now, they're going to be counting on him a little bit more. He's going to be a full-time starter this year, so they're going to need more out of him. But, that's certainly a guy that is dangerous and could step up. They do have to overcome the loss of Nana Ofaso Mensa, but they do have Marcus Deal on the inside, who in last year, while splitting time on that defensive line, did finish with 6 tackles for loss and 1 sack. At linebacker, the team does lose their leading tackler in Johnny Hodges, but they do return Nnamdi Obiazor, as well as Caleb Alarms Orr. So these are two guys that were very productive for him last year. Both had at least 50 total tackles. Those are going to be your starting linebackers. So you feel pretty good about the front seven or front six for this TCU team. You know, in the secondary, they've still got Bud Clark, who's there. That's a name that everybody should remember because he was on the team that played for a national championship. It's amazing to think that he's still there, but he's still there and he's still contributing. And he is one of the best players at his position in the Big 12. Expect that he is going to have a big impact in this game. But the thing is that, you know, him, Jamel Johnson at safety are back. They do have to replace all three of their starting corners from a year ago, the two on the outside and in the nickel. So this is a team that last year had some playmakers like Lamarian James on the outside, a one-time Carolina commit that eventually went on to have a really successful career at Old Dominion and then at TCU. But, you know, this is a group that has to replace some stuff on the back end. Maybe that's an area that Carolina can attack.
Yeah, I think that's where you expect Jordan Shipp to really maybe make his presence felt right out of the gate. A guy that you and I both high on, was both listed among one of our breakout players for the 2025 season, and we think there's stardom written all over him. I think the fact that, you know, they got to replace all three of their corners, you know, goes a long way for Carolina maybe to find a matchup or two that they like and exploit. And I think one difference that I think Carolina fans will have to adjust to, and we kind of talked about this last time we talked about Gio Lopez being named the starting quarterback, is Carolina's offense from week to week is going to look different because they're going to look at what the opponent does bad and really try to attack it in that sense. And I know that kind of sounds generic. Well, isn't that what every offensive coordinator does, every play caller does? Well, the answer is no. Like usually offensive coordinators and play callers, they do what they're comfortable doing and what their team is good at. Not, okay, how can we mold from maybe 1 week being a pass-first team to the next week being a run-first team? And I do think what maybe gives Carolina a leg up in this game is even though there's some returning production back up and down that TCU defense, they don't really know what to prepare for because we haven't seen Carolina's offense take the field yet. There's no film of what Carolina wants to do, what formations they're going to use. Is this going to be, you know, an RPO heavy offense? Is this going to be, you know, more of a traditional pro style offense? Is it going to be, you know, the spread offense that they're used to seeing? They don't know. And so there's kind of uncertainty where they have a lot to prepare for themselves. And so maybe Carolina could catch them off guard with a thing or two that maybe they're not prepared for. But nonetheless, there's talent on that side of the ball. There's experience on that side of the ball. They're physical up front, so Carolina's got to be prepared to handle that right out of the gate. But I think that's going to be one of the real fun chess matches to really pay attention to is, you know, this is a TCU defense that's really going to be learning and adjusting on the fly. And so if Freddie Kitchens is up to snuff, he could maybe out-scheme, out-play call what TCU's defensive coordinator is going to try to draw just because there's not really a game plan they can know going into the game how to attack Carolina's offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point that they don't have anything that they can go off of. I mean, we're not even talking about a spring game. Carolina's spring practice that they had where they basically were, you know, it was basically just team drills the entire time you were out there. I mean, it wasn't on television. So, yeah, no one can really get a feel for what exactly this offense is going to look like. And even being someone that was in the stadium, it was hard to really get a feel for what exactly this offense is going to look like. Those were also two quarterbacks that are not starting. One of them is starting. He's starting for Purdue in Ryan Brown. But, you know, Bryce Baker's not the starting quarterback. So we have no idea what things are going to look like with Gio Lopez in there. So I definitely think that's a good point. That'll keep TCU on their toes and will, you know, potentially, you know, go in Carolina's favor in this game. But, yeah, there is some talent on that defensive side of the ball. I think the other thing that we have to look at on the defensive side of the ball with them is they struggled a year ago when it came to stopping the run. I mean, they allowed 160.5 yards per game on the ground. Now, part of it was that their passing defense was so good that really nobody wanted to challenge their passing defense, and that's part of the reason why. I mean, they only allowed 185.2 passing yards per game. But the other angle of that is that teams were able to run it on them, so that's where some of those teams ended up leaning on the run in some of those games. I think this is going to be one of the things that Carolina's got to be able to do in this game. There weren't a lot of weaknesses, and this was a TCU defense that, believe it or not, got stronger as the year went along. I mean, in the final 7 games of the season, they allowed 13 or fewer points in 4 of those final 7 games. So they got stronger as the year went along, but that rushing defense might be something that Carolina can attack.
Yeah, you would expect there to be a heavy dose of Davion Goss to begin with, but we kind of talked about there. We expect Gio Lopez's legs to be a big part of the offense in general, but I really expect it to be a big part of what they do on Monday night as they try to just ease him into being the starter and really figuring out what he likes, what he's good at. But I think he's a guy, he's a player or a quarterback that really, whenever he gets his legs moving, I feel like, he plays better in the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of see that with this new age of quarterback where, when they get involved in the running game, it actually gets them in a better rhythm in the passing game. And so expect, yes, you Davion Goss to tote the rock. Maybe Benjamin Hall is going to be featured pretty early. I think Carolina's going to want to shorten the game. I don't think they want to get into a shootout right out of the gate with the TCU offense that I think is just more potent right now than Carolina is built to be, but also just identifying that weakness. And so Freddie Kitchens and that offensive staff, they're going to try to exploit that. And so I think if Carolina could get, kind of where that average was in terms of what TCU gave up a year ago, I think it really goes a long way for Carolina's offense being balanced, being able to run the football whenever they want to run to, whenever they want to, which also could set up some play action pass, set up some deep balls down the field. And so I think you expect Carolina to want to try to establish the run early. And if they can, I think that bodes well for them the longer that game moves along, because maybe their physicality up front with what they got in that backfield, maybe they could wear down that TCU defense in the first game of the season.
You look at the special teams for TCU, you've got place kicker Kyle Lemmerman, who is back after last year, made just 68% of his kicks, but was a top-ranked kicker coming out of high school. So there is potential there. We'll just have to wait and see on that. Ethan Craw, the punter last season, was really solid for them. I mean, he had just 6 punts returned all season, and it was for 42 yards. We saw that, a few years back, if you remember, with Tom Sheldon when he was at Carolina, where he had very few punts returned. That's a similar type of player to what Ethan Craw is, just a guy that's going to punt the ball and make sure that you are not going to be able to return it. That should be something that, really fits with what Carolina has on special teams, because while they do have the explosive Chris Culliver returning kicks, you got Will Hardy, who's more of a safe man back there returning punts, who's not really going to take many risks. So don't be shocked if you don't see a lot of punt returns. All right, we move on to the Tar Heel storylines for this game. And that's right, guys, it's taken us this long. We are 23 minutes into the podcast, and we have not yet mentioned that this is Bill Belichick's first game on the sidelines for Carolina. So, I mean, this is the thing. What are we expecting from this game from the Bill Belichick perspective? One, I think there's a couple of different things that you got to look at. You got to look at what is the environment going to be like for his first game, things that he can't necessarily control. But then what are the things that we think are going to look different on the field when we are inside Kenan Stadium on Monday night?
Yeah, in terms of the environment, I think it's going to be a spectacle unlike anything we've ever seen. First, as Carolina football fans. Second, maybe just as Carolina fans, just in general. Like, I think this will really rival some of the great atmospheres of what we've seen maybe at the Smith Center over the last handful of years.
Wow.
Because, there's just so much there's so much national attention. There's going to be, a special ESPN crew on set there. There's going to be live reporting from Chapel Hill. You would imagine starting at 9:00 that morning when SportsCenter goes live on the air. So I think you're going to have that part of it. You got a fan base that is re-energized, re-engaged for the most part. There's still some detractors, and there's still some people that don't think this is going to work. But, I mean, for two guys like you and I that have a platform that cover both football and basketball, we have been begging for there to be the financial investment, the financial commitment to the football side of things. And whether this works or not, you cannot deny, cannot question the commitment that Carolina has made into football from a financial standpoint. And that's a lot to get excited about. It's the first day of all the stuff they're doing leading up to the pregame, with the return of the old well walk. But you also got to like the fact that, because I heard the guy that's directing it on the coach's show last night, everything's going to be done by 7:30. That way that you could still be in your butts by the time kickoff started. Remember, that was a big thing for Mac Brown, was that he knew that this was a late arriving crowd, kind of wanted fans to show up early, be in the seats to be there for kickoff. And so they really revamped the pregame stuff to ensure you can have a great tailgate scene, but your butt's still going to be in the stadium to do what you're there to do, which is cheer on the team while they're on the actual field. And so I'm pretty excited for the environment, man. It's something that I still don't even know how to wrap my head around, the fact that when they walk out of the field, it's going to be Bill Belichick. I'm the nerd that's going to be interested. What's he wearing? Are we getting cut-off sleeve Belichick? Are we getting him on the hoodie? Is Jordan Hudson, is she going to be on the sidelines? I'm still, that part of me is still very curious as well. But from an excitement standpoint, I don't know. And we've seen Carolina play in big openers before. I don't know if anything has ever rivaled this, where I legitimately cannot wait. I'm going to enjoy this weekend. Tonight's been fun. Tomorrow night, you got a great game with Auburn and Baylor. Saturday is historic. Sunday night, we got a great doubleheader. But I still can't wait to be in that stadium on Monday night. It'll be good to be back in Kenan after not going to any games a year ago. And so just really cannot wait to be back in Kenan and be a part of what's going to be one of the most special environments in the history of Carolina athletics.
Yeah, it is going to be one of the more special environments. I think it's going to be pretty loud most of the night. I think Tar Heel fans are bought in. I think the stadium is going to be full, which you would say sometimes in years past when they would play openers in the midweek, that the stadium probably wouldn't be full. You would think to yourself, yeah, there's a good chance that people aren't going to show up because it's a midweek game. This one is different. There's going to be an amazing environment inside that stadium all night long. And it's like you said, I don't know what it's going to feel like when they take the field and Bill Belichick is walking out with them. It didn't feel real back in the spring. It really didn't seem like he was even out there. But that was just for spring practice where there weren't a ton of people that were out there. This is different. This is a game. This is the first game of his tenure here. I'm not worried about where Jordan Hudson is. I don't really care. I mean, she could be standing right next to him. As long as he's coaching the team and Carolina is winning, she can be wherever she wants. But I want to see him on the sidelines directing this team. And I want to see a team that looks like a Bill Belichick team. I want to see a team that's disciplined. I want to see a team that is held accountable when they make mistakes. I want to see a team that's tough. I mean, we've talked about it for years now. Matt Brown's crews were not tough. Those teams were not tough. We went through many years of thinking that eventually it was going to turn the corner, that all these guys that Carolina was getting in the trenches, that eventually that talent would, turn into something, and this would be a group that would be able to control the trenches. That never happened because they never played with the level of physicality that they needed to. We heard this offseason about the level of physicality that comes with a Steven Belichick defense. We've heard about physicality up front and Carolina wanting to be more physical along the offensive line. Well, hopefully we get that displayed in this first game. Hopefully when we're leaving Kenan Stadium, we're saying to ourselves, This looked like the Bill Belichick offense and defense that we thought we were going to see.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't result in a win, but at the least, I want to feel like coming out of the stadium, one, we've got a great environment that people are showing up and that people are excited, because I know we sure are. I mean, this is as pumped for a season opener as I've been in a long, long time. I mean, even, 2023 was definitely exciting because I thought that team had a chance to be really good under Drake May, but this is right up there with it. I think the thing that kind of holds me back just a little bit is there is so much unknown, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But I do think that the environment is what really has me excited for the potential of this game. And then just to see a team that does the right things on the field, that we feel like is going to be a fundamentally sound group. That's what I'm hoping we're going to see leaving the stadium. And I can write about that in the recap, and we can talk about that here on the podcast. I think the other big storyline here when it comes to just the team as a whole is there are 70 new players that are going to be out there. This is, I made this joke a couple of days ago, but I'm partially being serious. There might be times that I need to pull out my phone and I need to look up who was on the field for Carolina. And I cannot remember the last time that I did not have pretty much everybody memorized by number. There were, especially over the last few years, it became a little more difficult with the transfer portal, but it's nothing like this year. 70 new players across the offense and defense. It's going to be really hard to know exactly who's out there on the field. And I think it's part of the reason why coming into this game, we've heard a lot of national people talk about this game. I think the best take that I've heard of somebody talking about this game is Chip Patterson when he said, I simply don't know what to say. He literally did not preview the game when he was talking on the Adam Gold show that you guys can hear on WFNZ weeknights from 7 to 9 p.m. I mean, he said it right out. I don't know what to tell you because I don't know enough about this team. There's so much new with this group.
Yeah, and I think this was expected, right? Like, I was very upfront when Belichick got hired. You get rid of as many players as you want, and you bring in as many players as you want. And I guess you could say he did that. Whether it was by hook or by crook, there were a lot of guys that exited the program, and then they really utilized that second transfer window in the spring to really add some talent, some depth to the roster. And he made it known. I think it was either in his press availability yesterday or when he did his appearance on Carolina Football Live. Like, they have an idea of what the depth chart looks like, what the rotation looks like, but they're going to play these guys. And so kind of what you see on Monday night is not going to be the same team you see maybe next Saturday against Charlotte, what you see a month from now against Clemson. And so, I think that's also very intriguing as well, because if we're being quite frank, under Mac Brown, what you saw in the first game of the year, like, that was the team. I mean, really outside of injuries, there was never this storyline that emerged where this player just, took advantage of a rep and made the most out of it, and then got more and more trust and got a bigger role. When you look at Bill Belichick teams in the NFL, there were always one or two players on both sides of the ball that you didn't know who they were. You didn't know how they made it to the NFL, but was a difference maker for that team that year and was a part of the winning that team would enjoy. I kind of expect that to kind of translate here at the college level here with Carolina. Like, enough to realize that Gio Lopez, Davion Goss, Jordan Shipp, Yates, Thaddeus Dixon, that those are going to be guys that if Carolina is good, if they're competitive, they're going to play at a high level. But there might be a guy right now that you forgot is on the roster. You don't know where they transferred in, but all of a sudden they're thrusted into action against Clemson and they're making big plays. It could happen very well against TCU on Monday night. And so it does make it hard to talk about Carolina, but I think it's why it should make you even more intrigued to just watch this team on Monday night, because this will be a team that will grow and develop as much as any team we've seen in recent memory. Quite simply because under Mac Brown, that stuff did not happen, man. There was not player development during the season for the most part. Who you saw in the opener is who you saw by the end of the season. And usually that player was worn down. And I think this staff is going to be mindful of that. They're going to use the amount of influx of talent to their advantage. And we're going to learn a lot about these new guys on Monday night, one way or another.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that this first game, with the amount of guys that Carolina got out of the spring portal, is almost an extension of training camp. So this is going to be, and look, Carolina could still win this game. But the thing is that what you see from this group, the starting lineup that you see in this game, the starting depth chart could look completely different by the time they play Clemson. Hell, as you said, it could look completely different next week. We have no idea, because this staff, that's the good thing about where this team is at right now, is that you don't have many known quantities. You're right. You've got Price Yates. You've got, Thaddeus Dixon. You've got Andrew Simpson. You've got Mekhi Bayor, Kamori House, Marcus Allen that's still here, Will Hardy. Those are guys that you figure are going to be a big part of what Carolina does. But I'm going to tell you right now, if any of those guys do struggle, it does not seem like this staff is going to turn away and turn a blind eye and just say, yep, we're going to continue to play through it. They're going to replace guys on the field. And that's what I think should excite you, is that there's so much unknown about this group that really they are going out there with how short of amount of time they had to prepare. And this is, a little bit different than what Belichick had to deal with at the NFL level, because he doesn't have a preseason. They're going out there and they're going to throw stuff against the wall at times and see what sticks at certain positions. There are certain positions that we know they've got locked up. They're going to be fine. They'll be able to, hopefully run the football with guys like Davian Goss. They know that Gio Lopez is going to be their starting quarterback. We're going to live with whatever he gives you. But some of the other areas, the offensive line, really the defense, just in general, they are going to really see what these guys have. And throughout this game, you could see other guys enter the game that you're saying, really, this guy's in the game? But they could turn out to surprise you. So I wouldn't be shocked if we have moments like that with this group of guys that we just don't know a whole lot about when we're sitting in the stadium on Monday night. You move on to Gio Lopez. We talked a little bit about him last night. We'll talk about him here shortly again in this one, because this is his first Power 4 start. This is the first time that he's starting for a Power 4 school. He's going up against a really good school in TCU on the other side that's going to test him a little bit in this game. I think this game, it'll be interesting. You said it earlier. The biggest thing that they've got to be able to do, I think, early on, and we'll talk about it in keys to the game, is you've got to be able to run the football and settle your quarterback into the game. But I'm going to be really interested as to how he handles this first game, because you can't keep the training wheels on him the entire time. There are going to be moments you have to just let him go out there and sling it.
Yeah, I think, when I look at him and what I expect from him is, someone that his teammates call Magic Johnson. That's the nickname he's kind of earned from his teammates. I think you're going to see maybe a play or two that is going to wow you. I really just want to see him, and it's going to be very cliche. Just manage the game, manage the emotions, and really, manage the environment, because he's never. And I know he's played in some SEC stadiums during his time at South Alabama, but he'll never have played in a setting quite like this and what he'll play on Monday. And so can Carolina establish a run game early to keep him out in 3rd and longs and not have to make him have to make plays with his arm every single drive? How does he handle the level of physicality? The speed of the game. That's probably going to be the biggest difference out, right there with the physicality, is that the guys he's playing against, they're going to be quicker than what he's used to playing against on a game in, game out basis. But I mean, he's handled everything, I think, so far beautifully from the time that he's arrived. I think he's embraced being coached by Bill Belichick. All that comes with it, where he's going to love you and he's going to build you up, but he's going to do that by coaching you hard. And whenever you've heard him behind the microphone, he's been comfortable, he's been confident. I don't feel like the moment has been too big for him, but you still just got to manage it all, because it's going to be coming at you full throttle on Monday night. And so I expect him to play a clean game. This is a guy that protects the football, as we saw during his time with South Alabama. But I think it would really help him just individually if they can be able to lean on the run game. If the defense isn't, putting him in a situation where he feels like he has to go score a touchdown every single time, and he could just kind of ease his way into this, because I think as much as any player on the field that's dressed in Carolina blue, he's going to be at an adrenaline level that's going to be hard to come down of. So you're going to kind of manage that throughout the 60 minutes of football.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that you talked about there that I think you've got to see is you got to see a good defensive effort from Carolina. They've got to be able to help this young man out, because if they can't, and this turns into a game that's a track meet, I don't know if he's going to be able to keep up. Those are the types of games that TCU's offense is built to play. Carolina's offense might not necessarily be built to play that way. Towards the end of the season, maybe they can win some of those types of games. But if you're expecting him to go out and just completely take over this game, you're not going to be able to run the football, and you just expect to put it on his arm and win it. That might be asking a little bit too much. That's why I want to see them settle him in with some runs with Davian Goss, Benjamin Hall, Caleb Hood, whoever it is, and also use his legs. You talked about it. He's a guy that really sort of gets himself going when he ends up running the football. It's weird. Some of these mobile quarterbacks, man, when they take these hits, that really it gets the adrenaline pumping and can really change things for them and allow them to settle themselves into the game a little bit easier when it comes to throwing the football. I expect in this game, you're going to see the accuracy show up. That's the thing to me that really will be on display. And I'm hoping that you're going to see it at all levels of the field. I'm hoping that there isn't going to be some hesitancy to go down the field. I think really what it comes down to is you've got to be able to get separation. Your wide receivers, they've got to be able to create those open looks for him to throw into, those open windows for him to throw into. And look, with the guys that they've got, it's not a guarantee, because for a lot of these guys outside of Kobe Paysour, this is the first time they're playing extensive snaps in games. So this group, they have to be technical with how they run their routes. They have to be quick in and out of breaks. They've got to find ways to get open. And I mean, we've talked about it many times before, the Phil Longo saying, find grass. That's the thing that you've got to be able to do if you're a receiver in this game, because you want to be able to get open for him, make it easier on him to be able to get those passes in there instead of having him try to thread the needle so many times like we saw last year at times from Carolina's quarterbacks. Other things to keep an eye on here real quick, we'll run through them. New leaders looking to emerge for this team. We've seen some guys that have stepped up, guys like Jordan Shipp, Christo Kelly, if he does play in this game, Will Hardy. There are a lot of different names that have stepped up. I think it's important in this game for us to see those leaders emerge. Who are those calming presences on the field when things go wrong? Who are those guys that are really pushing the other guys on the field to be at their best? I think you need some of those leaders to emerge in this game when you're playing a Power 4 opponent like TCU.
Yeah, there's going to be adversity that's going to hit this team on Monday night, and so who's going to step up and make a play? Who's going to be the guy where if they have back-to-back 3-and-outs on offense, or if the defense has a bad drive or two, is it going to compound, or is someone going to go there, rally the troops, and they go figure it out? I think, from some of the subliminal message that you've gotten from Belichick, the guys that have been sent to the podium, I think those are guys that they're telling you without telling you. They've emerged as leaders on this football team, just with the way that Belichick, views the media. He's not just putting anybody up there. And so I think that the guys that you've seen behind the microphone at different times this year, I think those are some of the initial guys that you're counting on to be leaders, but you're still going to need more than that. And so, one of the things I've been really impressed with this offseason has been the voice and the leadership of Will Hardy. I'm really ready to see how that translates onto the playing field. I think Thaddeus Dixon is a guy just from an attitude and a confidence and a swagger standpoint. He's brought something that I think this team can really feed off on the defensive side of the football as well. And even if Christo Kelly can't suit up on Monday, and that would be unfortunate, I think that's still going to be a guy that's going to be a leader for this team and be a source of inspiration on the sidelines, cheering up his teammates, coaching guys up when they come off the field. And so I think that's going to be kind of, the way that, that Bill Belichick kind of goes about it. And we hear it all now where player-led teams are the best teams, and that's always been a factual statement. But you got to cultivate an environment where players feel empowered to become leaders. And I think that's kind of what Belichick has done and will do here, is that he's going to put the ball in their court. And if you want to be a leader, well, then you're gonna take the bull by the horns, and you're just gonna do it on your. I cannot force you to do it. Mm-hmm. I think you see that a lot of times at the college level where coaches feel they got to force this guy to be a leader and this guy to be a leader, but you can't force leadership. It's either something that you do naturally or something that's not in you. And so I think some of the guys that they brought in that maybe from a talent perspective maybe did not meet what you thought they wanted to meet from what a Bill Belichick guys, but from a leadership quality they could be. They could be the culture guys. That could be the backbone of the program. And you'll see those guys start to emerge on Monday night. And that'll be, I think, a fun storyline to follow throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, the thing for me is I need to see it in the front seven of this defense, the front six of this defense, whatever you want to call it, because the back end of this defense has got the guys. They've got Will Hardy. They've got Thaddeus Dixon. But who are the guys that are really going to step up leadership-wise in the middle of that defense? You're looking at a guy like Andrew Simpson. You're looking at a guy like Price Yates and saying, look, you guys should be the ones that are stepping up. But it's not a guarantee that those are the guys that do it. You need somebody else. So whether it's with the way that you play, whether it's the way that you talk, whatever, you got to see these leaders emerge quickly for Carolina. And I think we will, because when you've got this much turnover, you need to be, there need to be leaders on this team, guys that are leading by example. And to me, it doesn't matter if they're young guys or if they're older guys. And I think that's really the biggest thing for Belichick, and why, having this much roster turnover isn't necessarily the worst thing, because it breeds sort of this culture that anybody can step up. Anybody can be a leader for this group. And you've seen it already with a guy like Jordan Shipp, who's only a sophomore, already becoming a leader in that wide receiver room, already becoming just a leader on the offensive side of the ball. And even Gio Lopez, a guy that just got there. You could feel the leadership qualities that he had already when he was at ACC Media Day. He had yet to take the field for a practice at that time, and yet you could just feel it. So those are the things that hopefully we're going to see emerge in this game. Speaking of the offensive line real quick, this one probably the biggest question mark coming into this game. I think it is, because you're going to be starting a true freshman, it looks like, and Aiden Buchanan, albeit a guy that is a summer enrollee too for Carolina. So this is a guy that really hasn't been around that long for Carolina. He's going to be coming in, starting at left tackle. You've got a spring portal addition at the right tackle spot in Ja'Kai Moore. That's going to be another question mark for Carolina, especially with some of the play that he has shown over the last few years. And then when you go inside, that's where the injuries start to set in. No Austin Blaschke, potentially no Christo Kelly, or even if Christo Kelly plays, could be limited in this game. That, to me, leaves this as the biggest question mark for this entire team. And look, there are some question marks with this group.
Yeah, it's a revamped, rebuilt group, but that depth has already been tested, and Carolina hasn't taken a snap yet. And so how does Aiden Buchanan hold up there? You got to remember, yes, he's going to be playing left tackle, but that's not the blindside spot for your quarterback. But you're still going to have a true freshman that showed up in the summertime that's going to be, playing against as you mentioned, a good quality defensive line and what TCU will have to offer. Really, the interior, I think, is going to be the biggest question mark. You mentioned Noblaski will figure out what Christo Kelly can do, because I think that's where Carolina will look to try to establish a run game, is up the middle, and then try to build their run game off of that. But I think you're going to see a lot of designed runs, whether it's for Goss or even for Gio Lopez, and they're going to want to try to run it up the gut, wear down the interior of that defensive line, get to that second level, and then try to build their offense from there. So if Carolina is as improved as Phil Steele is, and if you read his magazine this summer, that was the position group he ranked the highest among Carolina's roster, then maybe they can find a way to overcome some of those injury concerns on the interior, maybe the inexperience you have on the outside. But if not, and Christo Kelly isn't ready to go, then it might be an offensive line that it's going to be a work in progress, and that might be a big difference in terms of whether Carolina emerges victorious against TCU or not.
Yeah, work in progress is what we heard from Bill Belichick just a couple of weeks ago when he spoke to the media. Not the most recent media session that he had, but the one prior to that. That's what has me a little bit concerned about this unit. And I'm not going to lie to you. He may be outperforming some of the guys on this roster. The fact that you're starting a true freshman and a guy that has only been around since fall camp started is concerning. That is certainly something that should have you a little bit concerned going into this game. But I think, hey, you never really know what a guy's going to be able to bring to the table. I said it when we talked about him when we first got the news that he was one of the guys that was out there with the starting group. He is a really good run blocker, was at the high school level. Hopefully that's something that you see in this game, and that can allow Carolina to really settle into the game early on. The thing that's going to be important is you got to be able to get the ball out quick. Keep the pressure off of these offensive linemen. Don't make them have to hold up for too long with some of the exotic things that you're trying to do down the field. I mean, yeah, there's some moments where you're hoping to hit plays down the field, but you got to make sure you're not putting too much on the plate of Aiden Buchanan, too much on the plate of Ja'Kai Moore, because that's going to set them up for failure. Let's move on to the keys to the game. And when we talk about the keys to the game, I think the biggest key to this game to start off with is you got to be able to run the football. We talked about it. This was a TCU team that last year allowed 160.5 yards per game on the ground. Certainly an area that they're going to be trying to improve. But if you're Carolina, the strength of this offensive line is going to be in the run game. You would imagine that Gio Lopez wants to be able to run the ball himself, as we mentioned, to sort of get himself going, make things a little bit easier on him. And you've got Davian Goss back there, who we do think is going to be an all-ACC caliber player, along with Benjamin Hall, who you really like. To me, the first key to this game is you've got to be able to run the football.
Yep. That to me, I think is going to be the key, I think, for maybe the first month or so, and until Gio Lopez, I think, really settles into being the quarterback for Carolina. But I think especially in this game, mainly just because you mentioned the weakness in terms of what TCU did a year ago. I think that Freddie Kitchens will want to test to see how improved they are in that area. And so Carolina might be more willing to run the ball at 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7 than maybe most play callers nowadays are. Usually you get 2nd and 8, that's now considered a passing down. I think Carolina, though, will look at it as okay, well, you stopped it once, but can you stop it again? I think Davian Goss is also going to be a guy that will be a typical, not going to say a UNC back, but maybe just a guy that I think he'll get better as the game moves along. The more you feed him, the stronger he gets. He can maybe wear down a defense with the way that he can finish runs. So it's going to start with him. I think Benjamin Hall, I think Caleb Hood will also get a little bit of run as well. Carolina, I think, will run 3 different backs at them because you got 3 different style of backs. And really, I think that could be really used to their benefit in addition to what Gio Lopez will provide in the run game as well. And there will be, I think, designed quarterback runs for him. In addition to him, if there's nothing there in his first read or two, tucking it and running, because even if it's 3 or 4 yards, that's still a positive play. The biggest thing I think why Carolina wants to run the football, needs to establish the run, is to really shorten the game and maybe take away a possession or two where this offense that TCU can throw out there would have less chances at it, but also to keep your defense as fresh as possible because they're going to be fired up and they're going to be there's going to be an adrenaline for them, but can you maybe shorten the game by a possession or two? I think Carolina ideally want to keep this games in the 20s anyway. They could maybe win this game if it gets into the 30s, but if it gets into the 30s or it crosses the 40-point threshold, I think that really favors TCU in this game as opposed to Carolina. So I think it's going to be fun to see how Carolina sets up the running game, how committed they're going to be to it, but also just knowing they've got 3 backs that they could use plus the quarterback. I think it'll have that TCU run defense on their heels because they've got a lot of guys they got to prepare for, and I think that favors Carolina, at least going into the game before they get out there and see if they can execute the game plan.
Yeah, and that's going to be the key is you've got to be able to run the ball. I mean, run the ball early is the biggest thing, and run the ball successfully early, because if you don't and Carolina struggles, then, yeah, there's a chance you fall behind. That's going to take you out of your offense, and all of a sudden you're going to have to be throwing the ball the entire game. That's not what I want to get into. I want to see a game where, even if it's close, you're going to continue to lean on that run. That's the strength of this offense going into the year. And so I want to see Carolina carry the ball, 35 times, maybe, between the backs and quarterback. I think that's probably a safe number to begin the night. And then you kind of go from there. If you are having that much success with running the football, then continue to run it. And, let's see if this TCU team can stop it. This group was one of the best in the country last year against the pass. Carolina's got to be able to run the football, because even though they have to replace their corners on the outside, it's not a guarantee that this is going to be a group that's going to be susceptible in the passing game. So I think that's the first key to the game. The second key to the game is limit the mistakes. And when I say mistakes, the main 2 things that I'm talking about are penalties and turnovers. Carolina's got to be a much more disciplined team than they've been the last few years. I mean, you look at what they were last year. They started the year out pretty well. They were a disciplined team to begin the season, but then it fell off as the year went along. This is a game where you can't give an offense that's this explosive, that's able to move the football the way they are through the air, multiple opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise. So Carolina's got to limit those mistakes. They've got to also keep their offense from getting backed up, especially if you are going to be run heavy. The enemy of being being able to run the football successfully is getting into these long situations where you're behind the sticks, you're playing 1st and 15, 2nd and 20, stuff like that. Carolina's got to be able to make sure that those things don't happen. And then when you go over to the other side with the turnovers, I mean, really, it's just about taking care of the football, because you don't want to give this offense those extra opportunities that I talked about. I think Carolina should be able to hold on to the football. I'm not necessarily worried about it from that angle, because I think Gio Lopez is a guy that we've seen so far in his career has really done a good job of taking care of the football. But I do think that it is certainly one of those things that, is important for Carolina in this game, and it's going to be important for their backs to hold on to the football as well, because if you give this TCU team those extra possessions, that could be the difference in this game.
Yeah, I don't really worry as much about the turnovers as I mainly do the pre-snap penalties and this and the type of mistakes that we've seen Carolina make that alter drives that really do impact the outcomes of a game. The thing is that I think at the college level, you can coach and instill discipline more so at the when these guys when these guys become professionals and they're cashing the checks that they're cashing. And yes, I know they're getting paid now in college, but when they're cashing the big checks at the pro level, it's really up to them if they want to be disciplined or not. At the college level, I still think that you can coach discipline into your guys. And I think that's been a big focus for Bill Belichick and this staff, because he knows internally this isn't the most talented roster and that they cannot afford to shoot themselves in the foot. There are teams that can overcome penalties. Carolina's not there yet. I think Bill Belichick will build the talent to that point, and I think it may happen as soon as next year. We're not there yet. And so in a game like this, where you're the underdog at home, yeah, you need to not have those false starts that make 3rd and 3, 3rd and 8. You don't need to have those holding penalties that can take away a big run or a big pass. You don't need to commit a penalty defensively that maybe goes from getting you off the field to giving them a new set of downs and they go on to extend the drive and score a touchdown. We saw that really be a big change in momentum in this South Florida Boise State game that has now turned non-competitive as the Bulls are up by 27 here in the fourth quarter. So I think that could still maybe be an area that Carolina will improve upon as the season moves along. But I do expect them to be as disciplined as we've seen them in a season opener, just because Belichick and the staff are not going to tolerate it, man. You commit a stupid penalty, your butt's not going to stay on the field. You're going to get taken out. You can, and that was the biggest crime I think that Mac Brown's staff made last year, was that there was just no accountability. That's not going to be the same case anymore. And so if Carolina can limit the penalties, because it's going to happen, it's the first game of the year, but if they can limit them and not have those penalties that impact drives, whether it's on offense or defense, and they can play a clean game, I think that's another recipe for them staying competitive, keeping this game close in the fourth quarter, where they're going to try to pull out the victory.
Penalties are definitely the thing you worry about more, because I think you have seen what Davian Goss brings to the table. You're not necessarily worried about him being loose with the football. You're not worried about Gio Lopez turning the ball over, because you look at what he did last year. He had an 18-5 touchdown to interception ratio. I know that you're going up against Power 4 competition. He did throw an interception last year against LSU, but I don't expect it to be that big of an issue. The thing that you worry about is, especially with how young this team is in some areas, the pre-snap penalties.
Yeah.
The even on the defensive side of the ball, you got two guys that are very aggressive in Thaddeus Dixon and Marcus Allen at corner. Both of those guys were penalized a decent amount last year. You're hoping that you don't see that in this game. It's just some of those things that happen in the first game of the season. And you don't want this to turn into one of those games where, hey, we've had an issue with penalties. All of a sudden, hey, that leads to a first down, that leads to a scoring drive for a touchdown. That leads to us getting in, stuck on a drive that we really needed. And hey, we get backed up into a 2nd down and 20 because someone held. Those are the types of things that you're hoping to avoid in this game. And especially with the young team, especially, on that offensive line, we talked about it with Aiden Buchanan. You hope that it doesn't get a little bit too much for him and some of those penalties start setting in. So Carolina's just got to be disciplined in this game, really make sure that they're taking care of themselves out there. And yeah, make sure that you don't turn the football over at a high rate. And then on the other side, the last key to the game is pressure Josh Hoover, because here's the thing about Josh Hoover. Last year, when he was kept clean, he was a really, really good quarterback. He was, a guy that completed 70% of his passes. He threw for 3,226 yards in a clean pocket, 18 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Graded out as one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football when the pocket was kept clean. Under pressure, which was not that often, only 25% of his dropbacks, he completed just 48.5% of his passes thrown, 726 yards, 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. It was rare that he was under pressure last year, but when you were able to get there, that really changed everything for him, and he became a quarterback that turned the ball over at a pretty high rate. If you're Carolina, this is one of the things that you have to do in this game. You've got to be able to get after the quarterback, change the picture for him, and force him to have to throw into some of these tight windows, maybe creating these turnovers. I think that's one of the big keys for Carolina if they want to be able to get this TCU offense off the field consistently.
And it's going to be a challenge because of how TCU likes to get the football out early and quick, mainly because they know that their quarterback is better when he's being kept upright as opposed to with pressure in his face, albeit most quarterbacks are that way. But I do wonder, can Steve Belichick and that defensive staff, can they scheme up some pressure, disguise some blitzes that he maybe, isn't able to be prepared for when they're looking at it? Because they're going to be watching a lot of Washington film from a year ago with Steve now coming to run the defense, and then you've got Thad Dix and Kamori House that are going to be a big part of what Carolina does in the back seven. But can they maybe scheme up a thing or two? Can they pull off a stunt or two up front that is a lot more effective than maybe what we've seen in recent years, that can really generate some pressure on the quarterback? If he can stand back there and have 4+ seconds to throw the ball every single time, he's good enough, and they've got enough weaponry where he will put up numbers and he'll move this offense up and down the field. But if they can get him off balance, if they can get him out of rhythm, if they can get him to not trust his feet in the pocket and be looking to duck and evade and maybe escape the pocket before he really has to, and force him in a mistake or two, that could really ultimately be the difference in this ball game. Maybe you force him to make a throw that, Dixon or someone can make a play on, they get an interception that changes field position, changes momentum, Carolina can go win the game. Or maybe it forces him to miss a wide receiver that's open, that, that could extend a drive that now becomes a punt. It's going to be, I think, the little things of what Carolina can do in pass defense. Winning up front is going to be the most important thing, but that back seven doing its job as well, holding on and being where they need to be in pass protection. So I think Carolina will be aggressive because they'll know his tendencies when he's under pressure, kind of what he defaults to. But it is going to be a challenge because of how they like to get the football out of his hands. So that's going to be, I think, a real fun chess match to watch when TCU's on offense and when Carolina's on defense. And whichever coaching staff outcoaches the other, that might be what tilts the tide in their favor.
Yeah, when blitzed last year, he was actually a pretty successful quarterback. So if Carolina is going to blitz, they've got to be able to get home. I mean, last year completed 66.5% of his passes when blitzed for 1,433 yards, 13 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions. So that's certainly something that Carolina's got to be, weary of. They got to know that if they were going to be blitzing a lot, they've got to be able to get home. The one thing that I will say is that even though his team didn't get a lot of sacks last year at Washington, Steven Belichick's defense still ranks second in the country in pass defense. So that's one of the things he prides himself on. Even if you're not able to necessarily get home and finish the sacks on the quarterback, you've got a back seven that can handle itself and can find a way to hold up against some of these better passing attacks that you're going to see this year. The other thing is, if you're looking for some of those turnovers, middle of the field is going to be where you can find some of those. So it's going to be on the safeties, man. Guy like Will Hardy, maybe he can come up with one here, because last year, 8 of the interceptions that Hoover threw, 8 of the 11 were in the middle of the field. All right, let's get to our predictions here. We are running a little bit late here on this edition of the podcast, but previewing this game, this is such a huge game that we wanted to talk to you guys for a while about, so we're dragging on here just a little bit. But let's get into the predictions for this game. I'll let you go first because I know the direction that you're going in this one, and then we'll see whether or not I end up changing from what I had predicted the other night.
Yeah, if you joined us for our schedule prediction episode earlier this week, we picked the game then, and I picked Carolina to win. And I'm going to maintain that as we're now into our official prediction with the game now, 4 days away. There's not a sport, I think, like college football where the environment can really overwhelm an opponent or maybe give an opponent what they need to come out with a victory. You could tell me that TCU has more talent, has more depth than Carolina, and I probably wouldn't argue with that. That's an established program that's 3 years removed from playing for a national championship. They've got a quarterback that's produced at the power conference level. But, we also saw what happened when they faced Colorado at home a few years ago when Coach Prime showed up, and they got beat. And I know that TCU will be motivated to not have that same thing happen again. But I just look at all the things that I think are going in Carolina's favor. I think the unknown, for as frustrating as it is for us because we don't know what to expect, I think is going to be a benefit for Carolina. I think it makes it harder on that TCU staff to prepare. It's probably the exact is what Belichick wanted. He doesn't want anyone to have an idea what his football team is going to be, what his football team can be. I think, the energy is going to be something that this team is going to feed off of because they'll never have played in an environment like this during their time at Kenan Stadium. I think Carolina will be able to run the football with Davian Goss, with Gio Lopez, to set up some throws in the play action pass game where they can maybe make a big play or two. And I think the defense makes plays that we're quite frankly not used to seeing them make that'll alter the game, whether it's a turnover, whether it's just getting off the field on that 3rd and 3, making that tackle in the open space, no matter what it is. I think they're going to make the plays that you got to make to win, because if we know what this game represents in terms of momentum and what the schedule looks like, the players know it as well. And they know, God, if we can beat this TCU team that won 9 games a year ago and that can compete for a Big 12 championship, it could really set us up to have a real first big season under Bill Belichick. And so I think it's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a competitive game. It's going to be a physical game. I think Carolina emerges with a 28-24 victory to kick off the Bill Belichick era at North Carolina.
Yeah, this one's tough, man, because I predicted the other night that TCU is going to win this game. And, as I've thought about it, I mean, Carolina's got a really good shot to win this one. There's no doubt about it. The environment, I think, is going to be the biggest thing that is going in their favor, because outside of that, you've got a team that just has so many new guys. And that's the thing that really concerns me. But I think this environment's going to be amazing. I think you're going to see Carolina be able to run the ball pretty successfully. I think Gio Lopez will settle in during this game. I think you'll see him, as this game goes along, get more and more comfortable. I just wonder about that team that's on the other side. TCU a year ago won 9 games. Sonny Dykes has this team, feeling like they probably are one of the underdogs in the Big 12 because they aren't being respected by a lot of the preseason magazines. But this is a team that returns a lot of talent from a year ago. They do have, some guys that you have to worry about in the receiving core. Eric McAllister is certainly one that Carolina is going to have to be wary of. That's where you're hoping Thaddeus Dixon is going to be most of the night, trying to take him away. But then you wonder about a guy like Jordan Dwyer, who comes over from Idaho, who had over 1,000 yards receiving last year. I kind of wonder about Marcus Allen still. That's one area that I still have concerns about. And I'm wondering, defensively, are they going to be able to get pressure up front? I think outside of the offensive line, the area that I'm most concerned about is this defensive line, because I just don't know enough about some of these guys. I think Bryce Yates is a really good player, but is he a guy that's ready to take over and destroy teams up front consistently? I mean, we saw it, a year ago in the bowl game. But I just don't know if he's ready to do that in this game, if he's going to be able to wreck shop against this offensive line for TCU that did such a good job of protecting their quarterback last year. I don't know if we're going to see guys on the interior of this defensive line be able to get off of blocks and make plays. You're asking guys that were never full-time starters to step up and be full-time starters for you in this game and play a lot of snaps and win in the trenches where it matters. Maybe I'm just doubting too much because the history of this program has shown you that anytime you get your hopes up, you seem to be disappointed. But, I mean, this is one of those games that I want to win more than just about anything. Clearly it's not up there with the rivalry game, but in terms of a non-rivalry game, this is right up there in terms of the games I want to win because I want to set a tone to this season. But I think TCU is just a little bit more talented than Carolina. I think the fact that they've been together for as long as they've been together, I think is going to make a difference in this game. And I think TCU wins this game, believe it or not, 28-24. I think I was in favor of TCU.
I was hoping maybe I had done enough to convince you. I knew our scores were going to be the same. I knew when I said 28-24, I could tell by your reaction that was what your score prediction was.
Yep.
I was hoping maybe I could convince you, but I couldn't convince you to add Cam Sexton into the new open for the upcoming season. So I'm now 0 for 2 and trying to convince you in the early part of the year. But hopefully, when we're making that trek back to Charlotte on Monday night, because it's gonna be a long day for your boys. Hopefully, it'll be a fun and victorious car ride. The biggest thing that and maybe I don't see there's a way that Carolina gets blown out. And
No.
I think that's refreshing, because there'd be nothing more deflating than all this hype, this build-up anticipation, and they go out there and lay an egg. But that has not once entered my mind. I think even if they lose, we could come away really encouraged, and really still optimistic about where this team is going. And usually you don't get to say that when you lose a big-time opener. But I think for Carolina, even if they lose the game the way you're talking about, it would still be a sign that they've really come a long way in a short time under Belichick.
Yes.
And that they could still really have a season that could set them up for future success. So I think that's what makes Monday night so fun, so intriguing, so interesting. Yes, a win for momentum would be huge, and we would be as high as we've been in September in quite some time. But even a loss could really spell good things to come for Carolina, and that's a really cool spot to be as a Carolina football fan.
Yeah, that's the thing. Just keep it close, man. If you can stick around, you never know. In my scenario, you could have the ball last, and all of a sudden you have a chance to win the game and really turn this thing into an uber positive. I think, if they lose this game, you're losing to one of the 3 best teams that you have to play on your schedule. If not the second best team that you play all year. So there should be no shame in losing to them. It's very similar to what you're going to feel like when we play Clemson. I know there will be some people, there will be some podcast out there that probably will predict that Carolina is going to win that game. Barring something shocking, I find it hard to believe that I'm going to pick Carolina to win that game over Clemson, because a lot of people believe that's a team that's going to be not only in the college football playoff, but winning a national championship. I think this game is somewhat similar, not on that level, but I do think that if Carolina is to lose this game and they lose it close, my message to the fan base is do not jump off the bandwagon. Do not say, well, we're not going to games. We're not showing up for Richmond. We're not showing up for the game against Clemson. We're out after one bad night. That's not what you need. And like I said, I don't think it's going to be a bad night. I just think there's so much new that there is going to be some moments where Carolina is thrown off by some of the things that TCU is doing. And I think that's going to be the difference in the game for Carolina. If they didn't have nearly as much turnover, I think Carolina probably wins this game. But I think that's the direction that I got to go for right now. And I hope I'm dead ass wrong. I hope I'm as wrong as anybody's ever been about this game, and Carolina comes out on top. Well, no matter what happens, we're going to be here for you guys. We recorded this edition way early in the week for you guys, because we wanted to make sure that we got it up for you. So make sure that you guys are checking out all the stuff on the website throughout the week, because there are going to be some more injury reports. There'll be an update on Christo Kelly. We'll find out whether or not he's actually going to play. The article is probably going to be up either sometime tomorrow or sometime on Saturday. I would prefer to get it up tomorrow, but we'll see how much time I have with work and everything like that. I'm hoping that we can get that out to you guys. And then, from there, what we'll do is we'll just tweak and adjust the injury report. Whenever there is something that's announced, we'll make sure that we get it out to you guys and share that news with you. But it is, as we've always done, whenever we do previews on the website: team breakdown, team stat breakdown, injury report, keys to the game, and we'll do our projected starting lineups. Now, again, we are just winging it. Tomorrow, I will put out my projected depth chart for Carolina. But again, that is me just going off of some of the vibes that we've heard around, spring and fall camp, some of the intel that's been coming out, and really just me piecing it together the rest of the way for you guys. So make sure you check out that article that'll come out tomorrow as well. So we'll be going double articles tomorrow. Make sure that you guys are checking that out over there on HeelToughBlog.com. Also, over on the social media pages, that's where you can get all of the latest news that's going on with Carolina. Follow the Heel Tough blog page on Twitter. That is where all our articles come out. It's the streamline right to all the content. That's the only thing that comes out on that account. That's the only thing we put on there. We don't even share our own tweets usually on there. Very rare. But we do put the podcast editions on there. We do put the articles on there. So make sure that you follow that and then turn on the post notifications. That's the best way to keep up with all of our content. Also, go over to the Facebook page. Give us a like over there. That's another way you can get all of the content in one central location. But when you go over there, there is no way to follow it. So whenever articles get released, it would just be on your timeline. But either way, it's still a great way to keep up with all of our content. And then we are pushing it. Make sure you guys go over to the YouTube page and give us a subscription over there. We would greatly appreciate that. We are pushing YouTube hard this season because that is really one of the things that we haven't done before. We've been really heavy on Facebook. We've been really heavy on Twitter, and we really appreciate that. But YouTube is a great way to watch too, and we want to get those numbers up there. So if you could head over to the website, check out some of the other editions of the podcast that we got up there, all the preview editions that we did, all the position previews, all that stuff you can check out before the day of the game. Make sure you go over there and do that for us and hit that subscribe button when you do. But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.